And let's allow all the judges to settle down. Where is the DCS choir? Please do approach here. I am Lindiwe Nchalinchali, the Deputy Minister of Correctional Services. I will be the Program Director for Part 1. Indeed, it is 9:30. We said by 9:30 we will be starting, and we are keeping to that. As I chair the program, also what we'll request is that we all adhere to time allocations. We are going to start as our choir try to arrange themselves. We've got serious people that sings in this choir. The champions and everything. DCS has everything. You will tell me when you are ready. As we take the national anthem, all of us, we know the protocols of the national anthem. We stand to our attention, no movements, and then there will be no chewing and everything. I'm just laying the foundation because some people are moving up and down. We must respect our national anthem. Men with heads, they know what to do. Those that are in uniform, they know what to do. If we have all settled down, let me see, Minister, if your judges are seated, they are fine. Everybody is fine. Choir, are we ready? We can all rise to the national anthem. Silent mode, all phones. If you don't have a silent mode, switch it off. Thank you. Thank you very much to the Department of Correctional Services, Hoshimampuru Choir. In all our management area, at least we have them. And where I was with the JCPS cluster in Umtata, it was led by our champions nationally. So Correctional Services is doing well. Let's give them a round of applause once again. We will be moving with our program. Let me welcome you all in this summit where we review the South African parole system, all of us as we work, as we interact, as we do presentation, as we go to commission, let's make it a point that our views are captured. We are having a team of scribers that will be taking all the minutes and making sure that we capture everything so that as we continue with our work and we summarize the days, the 2 days, all issues raised at plenary are captured. And I hope I will not go after people to say you must be in a commission, you must be in plenary. We are all responsible citizens and we are going to make sure that these 2 days work. I will be acknowledging your good selves as we continue with our program. But before I do that, RC Gauteng, where are you? I don't see him. Because there's basic things that we must be briefed in terms of the bathrooms, the emergency exit and stuff. Because there was a meeting where I was, those matters were not taken care. And when emergency struck, everybody was found wanting. RC Gauteng with the management area, while the NC is gonna come, the National Commissioner, to give us the purpose of this summit. You'll be coming to me so that I can give you a platform thereof to give us those nitty-gritties, because we can't host so much numbers and they don't know the emergency exit and where are the bathrooms. So you'll be coming to me. I'm seated at the front. Allow me to call on the National Commissioner of Correctional Services, Ntate Tobagale, to give us the purpose of the summit. Over to you, NC.
Thank you, Program Director. Honorable Minister of Correctional Services, Dr. Peter Groenewald, Honorable Minister of the Department of Social Development, Mayor Tolashe, Honorable Deputy Minister of the Department of Correctional Services, Ms. Lindiwe Nchali, the Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of the Department of Correctional Services, Mayor Ramulubeng, and Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee of the Department of Correctional Services with us today, Directors Generals and senior management from departments of the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster, the senior management of the Department of Correctional Services, including regional commissioners that are with us today, leaders from law enforcement and civil society, the judiciary, academics, researchers, and our international partners. The current parole system was first introduced in South Africa on the 1st of October 2004. Prior the introduction of the new Correctional Services Act, the Parole Board consisted of members of the Department of Correctional Services who only made recommendations on the possible placement of offenders. Decisions to place offenders out were delegated to members of the Department of Correctional Services at various levels. Due to a reflection on the performance of the parole system and identified discrepancies, critical views to how the system impacts on the criminal justice system, the parole system was revised. The new concept took away the decision-making process from the Department of Correctional Services and put it in the hands of community members. Hence, currently we have parole boards that are consisting of those that have experience in the criminal justice system, but also members of the community. The parole boards are independent in terms of the Act. They make decisions at different levels. The Act reserved decision-making also when it comes to lifers, to the minister, who is advised by the NCCS. As we continue to implement the system, the department saw it fit that we should again reflect on the performance of the system. This was done because, again, of the views that were coming from members of the public, the views that were coming from government, the judiciary, and the academics. Even views that came from the victims. A draft position paper was developed, and the draft position paper addresses the following. Should we continue to have the same structures of the parole system with the same authority and powers? What are supposed to be the conditions when an inmate is put out on parole? How do we make it a point that the victim has more voice or an appropriate voice in the parole system? What about the community that the offender is going to be released to serve the rest of the sentence? Being part of that community. Recently, the parole system has been under a lot of pressure because of practical examples of what our parolees become when they get to be released and when they are completing their sentence amongst members of the community. The victims have a perspective. The parolees themselves have a perspective. Different structures in communities have a perspective. We also, as the department, have a perspective. And our perspective is very simple. It is that when you are on parole, you are still serving a sentence. And you need to comply with the conditions of parole. The pressure that the system is under is for us to answer one question. Is the parole system or parole itself a right or a privilege? Which categories of offenders are supposed to be released on parole? Is the parole system itself supposed to exist? Or offenders are supposed to serve a sentence and complete the sentence under the care of correctional services inside the centers, incarcerated? The purpose of the summit is to start providing clarity, interventions, suggestions on how we can shape the system for the better, in line with our dictum as the Department of Correctional Services, which says that corrections is a societal responsibility. Program Director, let me thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, National Commissioner, for giving us that purpose. I will ask RC to briefly come and give us the drill in terms of, in case of emergency, where must you be assembled and where are your restrooms?
Program Director, Deputy Minister Nchali, thank you very much. Let me acknowledge the presence of our Minister of Correctional Services, Dr. Groenewald, Minister of Social Development, Minister Tolashi, Chairperson of Portfolio Committee, Honorable Ramolobeng, and the honorable members of Portfolio Committee, the judges, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Mine in short, just to indicate, our restrooms are at the back. If you go out with the back rooms there, you will see on the left-hand side, on my left-hand side, are our ladies, and on my right-hand side are for our gents. In case of emergency, if you go out with the very same two exits, there's a down with the road that we came in from the gate. If you go straight, down there we've got a correctional center there, correctional center central. Right at the gate of that center, if there's any emergency in this room, we'll all go to that area, and that's where we'll get a direction on what to do next. Thank you very much, DM. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's called an assembly point. These drills, you must familiarize yourselves with because they are very life-saving. But thank you very much for sharing with us. Let me quickly acknowledge the Honorable Minister of Correctional Services who is with us, Dr. Groenewald. It's our department, but as a program director now I'm officially acknowledging their presence. Minister of Social Development, Minister Tolashi. Thank you very much for gracing this critical activity, which is a reviewal of our parole system. Asikuthathi kancane lokho kwenza kithi, Minister. Thank you very much. And also let me acknowledge the presence of our Portfolio Committee Chairperson, Mayor Ramolobeng. Just wave your hand, Chair. So that, thank you very much. And may I request that all members of the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services just to rise and wave so that they can see that we work together with the Portfolio Committee and the department, and we remain accountable to the department. Let's give them a round of applause as led by the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. Then we've got JIX, that is led by our judge, Judge Cameron. Will I be sent to Hoshimampuru female if I say, can all members of JIX rise so that also they are seen? I don't want to be sentenced. You know, when you say judges. Thank you very much, JIX. And these are key stakeholders to correctional services. We've got our own UNISA partners. Can all UNISA also rise? Key stakeholder as we skill our inmate and having programs. There they are. And we've got different universities, University of Free State. They would be presenting. University of Northwest. Thank you very much. These are the guests that will be making a meaningful input. Also, we've got our own judges that sit across our courts. I'm even scared. Baba Malindi, ngenisukumise, angeke ngibophe. Can all our judges rise so that they can see that we're taking this process very, very, very seriously? So, Judge Malindi, Makamo, there's quite a lot. All our judges. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. It's a difficult work they do. We must acknowledge your presence, that you, out of your busy schedules, you've taken time to come and be with us here. And I will acknowledge as we continue with our work, but we've got also various stakeholders that are key to our programs. We've got also our parolees that are here with us today. They are a living testimony to say it is possible to be paroled and you behave and you are doing well outside there. And I must indicate, Honorable Minister, that I must share with the House that I am dressed here by Kergood Correctional Facility, even so that they don't go and re-offend again. Let's give them a round of applause for dressing up your DMs. And indeed, I feel like a princess. Now it's the time that we call our Honorable Minister, Dr. Peter Groenewald, to give us the keynote address. Can we all rise as the Minister comes and address the House? Thank you very much. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Please be seated. I just want to... Thank you very much. I want to start to say, from my side also, welcome to all our distinguished guests. And if I refer to our distinguished guests, it includes all of you that you are here today. Of course, my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Social Development, Deputy Minister, members of Parliament, members of the National Council of Correctional Services, other judges, presenters, officials, ladies and gentlemen. It is an important day today. And I think it became necessary to start with the revision of the parole system with members and organizations, stakeholders from society. Today and tomorrow, we're going to hear from people from society, academics, can I say policy experts, unions, people who are the voice of society. And why is that so important, that we hear the voice of society? It is because, as far as we look at correctional services, you will see that we say corrections is a societal responsibility. A societal responsibility. Not only of correctional services, but of each and every one. Because the inmates in correctional services are people from society. And therefore, we have the responsibility to see how we're going to deal with it. And the main focus, of course, is on parole. And then you will see parole is actually facilitating offender reintegration back into society. Now, that may be a short sentence, but it has huge implications. Implications in this sense that you have offenders, they did something wrong, some more than others, more severe, but in the end, they have to be reintegrated into society. And that is the responsibility of the system to see that when we reintegrate offenders in society, that they do not re-offend. And I always say that if someone received a sentence of 10 years of imprisonment, after 10 years, correctional services cannot say, well, we don't think that the person has not been adequately rehabilitated. We have to release such an offender after the completion of his or her sentence. And that's where our responsibility is coming to the fore. That's why we're having this summit, that we can talk and look at the present parole system? And yes, of course, there are strengths in the present parole system, but there are also some challenges. And I want to say that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. In fact, what we must do is to see that we can strengthen our parole system so that in the end we are successful when we have people reintegrated in society. And what is the test for successful reintegration? I see it as whether the person will reoffend again. And we must not be in a state of denial. I always say that whether it is in your personal life, whether you're in an organization, whether you're a member of parliament, whether you're a minister, whether you're the president of South Africa, if you're in a state of denial about a certain matter, you cannot solve the problem. And we must admit that one of the challenges of the many others is the recidivism in South Africa. If I look, for instance, at some statistics of the previous annual year, we had 209 parolees who committed murder while they were on parole. We had about 330 parolees who reoffended and committed rape. And that, if I only take those two offenses, are actually a threat to the safety, not only of women and children, but to society and the communities of South Africa. Therefore, our responsibility is to ensure that we do everything to make South Africa a safe and a more safe place for each and every one. So for the next 2 days, we will hear some views of presenters putting forward their ideas how we can improve the parole system. Tomorrow, for the whole day, we will discuss it and we will hear the voices. And I am very pleased that, for instance, almost all the members of the Portfolio Committee of Correctional Services from the National Assembly, that those members are present. Because in the end of the day, I do foresee that we will have to have certain legislative amendments. And they are going to be the people. The members of the National Assembly as well will have to ensure that we go through those processes and amend legislation to the benefit of the people of South Africa. And they are here to listen. They want to hear how you think. Because we are representatives of the electorate of South Africa. And we must listen what the people have to say to us. So therefore, be assured that we are here to listen. If I talk about challenges, of course, there are many challenges. I referred to the recidivism problem, reoffending. Part of that problem is also the fact that we have overcrowding. We have to look at all those matters. We will have to look at the structures in terms of parole, the parole boards, the composition, the criteria that have to be applied, services to be given, training, rehabilitation in our facilities, how we can enhance that. That's why I said as minister that I want emphasis, focus on self-sufficiency, That includes, for instance, the providing of agricultural products. We have workshops, we have bakeries, because we must see that each and every one of those activities, they are actually part of rehabilitation. I'm very fond of gardening, and what I experience when I work in my garden is that you put something in soil, you water it, you care to it, and you see it grow. It is satisfaction. It actually can also say to our people that there is worth in yourself. When I visit our facilities and I speak to inmates or offenders, I say to them all, yes, you are here, but go and sit and think that there must be something good in yourself and focus on that so that you can improve your future and create a better life. And I want to say, pivotal to this whole process is also the family is, as far as I'm concerned, the core issue that must also be addressed. The family, and that's coming back to society, that we as South Africans must also ask ourselves, what role do we play as a family? If you're a father, what example do you put forward for your children? That's your responsibility to ensure that you put forward a good example. The mothers, it's the same. What example do you put forward to your family? And I always say that mothers, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm a man myself, is playing a much bigger role when it comes to our children and examples set forward for the future of our children. And we must also ensure that society, that the family life in South Africa must be attended to. Because that is where, for instance, we as, can I say, politicians, as government, have an obligation to see that we can create jobs, that we can ensure that people have a job. Because if you have a job, then you have a brighter future. And that's what I mean when I say that we have a responsibility when it comes to the parole system, and reintegration is a societal responsibility. I'm looking forward to listen to the presenters. You will see on the program, we have different topics touching on various matters. For instance, the victims of crime, because it is also a balancing act when it comes to correctional services to ensure that yes, there must be rehabilitation, there must be parole, but we must also say to each other, there's also a responsibility to ensure that justice prevails. You cannot ignore the victims of crime to address some other issues. And I'm a straightforward person, let's put it in simple terms. We cannot just put people on parole to address the overcrowding problem. We have to take the responsibility to ensure that if we put people on parole, that the community will be safe. Because it's the victims who actually paid the price. And therefore, from my side, I want to thank again each and every one present today. For people who traveled far to be here today, people who are actually part of the system. I think on our parole boards, I think of our NCCS, I think of all the role players within that system, the case management committee, and the risks that have to be identified of a specific offender. For me, that is most important. What is the risk of reoffending? That's where psychiatrists, social workers, criminologists are playing their role, professional people. And I've put emphasis on the fact that we must use more criminologists as well to see, because they see things that we as ordinary people don't see. And that is important. So let's take hands. Let's say to each other, we will work together to ensure that we have a better parole system that can protect the victims and make society and South Africa a safer place. I thank you all.
Thank you very much. Let's give him once more another round of applause. Thank you very much, Minister, for that keynote address. I must indicate that we are really ahead of schedule. When the Minister started, we were 9 minutes before, and he was supposed to conclude at around 20 past 10. We take tea break, but we're ahead of time. So ready yourself, presenters, because I don't waste time when I'm on the driver's seat. As presenters, you must make sure that you are ready when I call you. Don't say our schedule for this time, because we must make use of the time effectively so that we can conclude our business. On your packages, there are some leaflets in terms of our programs. There's day 1, day 2 programs, and we're sticking to day 1 today, but also there is a complainant and victim involvement in parole boards. It's for you to read as you prepare to go to commissions. Also, some leaflet that talks to your parole, know what it is, how it fits in the criminal justice system of our country, those loopholes that the Minister was talking about, to say what is it that we can do. Also the offender rehabilitation part, which is part of it. So make sure that you make use of this as you prepare, and also make sure that you have signed an attendant register so that we know that you were part of this. Let me also acknowledge that we've been joined by Deputy Minister Mohai from the Presidency, Monitoring and Evaluation. And Tate Mohai, let's give them a round of applause. Also, on the side of Abasebenzi, we are joined by the Pope Crew President, Ntate Ngwenya. Must I put my glasses on? You are here. Oh, yes, how Motibi, uhleli duze kwa President, awusangibambi ngeroko. You are welcome. The leadership of Abasebenzi is very key to our sector, because if you've got distressed and unhappy staff, you are in trouble. We must also take care of the well-being of our employees in terms of the wellness programs. So we're moving to the next item. You've just had tea. Am I wrong or what? Yeah, it can't be tea time as we're still nibbling, ne? The next program is coming, that was supposed to be 10:30, addressing the deficiencies of the current parole system and propose reforms. Can I call upon Mr. B.J.N. Lombard and Advocate M. Mpahlwa to come to the fore? I hope our table is ready in terms of beaming those presentations so that we move. You'll be moving pay as you go. I'll check if really you deserve a tea or not. But for now, over to you. Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause as they approach.
Thank you, MC. Honourable Minister of Correctional Services, Dr. Pieter Groenewald, National Commissioner of Correctional Services, Mr. Makoti Tobakale, distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's both an honor and a privilege to stand before you today at this Parole Board Summit. I'm grateful for the invitation and opportunity to contribute to this important dialogue on strengthening the correctional system, enhancing parole processes, and improving offender rehabilitation and reintegration. As we gather here, we do so with a shared purpose to ensure that our correctional and parole frameworks are not only just and effective, but also responsive to the needs of our society. The work you do as leaders, board members, and practitioners directly impacts community safety and the lives of offenders striving to reintegrate. Today I will share insights on post-conviction sex offender testing, also abbreviated PSCOT, but it's PCSOT, a practice that's been proven internationally to be a valuable tool in parole supervision, offender accountability, and community protection. My aim is to explore how this can be contextualized for South Africa in support of the department's mandate to rehabilitate and reintegrate offenders with safeguarding the public. Okay, next slide. Do I do it yet? Okay. There we have our population. That was the latest statistics released in 2023. Definitely overcrowding is something. Okay. Definitely it is quite a large number and something that needs to be dealt with quite seriously. The challenge is obviously is overcrowding, poor infrastructure, understaffing, gang violence, and the list carries on. Let me just see how this one works. Next one. There we go. Court backlogs is also a serious problem. Illegal immigrants that Dr. Groenewald is also dealing with very decisively. Life sentences that's increased by 4,000% in less than over a number of years. And then sexual violence and abuse remain very high despite policies. Okay, healthcare, vulnerable groups. We look at the state patients awaiting psychiatric care. We're looking at limited medical staff. We're looking at long waiting times. And then HIV treatment, TB treatment. That is definitely improving, but certainly still a problem out there. Average incarceration costs, we all know, is quite high. The last average is released in 2024. That gives us an average of about 14,000 per person, per inmate. That's despite any other specialist treatment or anything else that they may require. Okay. There we have sex offenders in prison. Quite a large number. Residivism is at 11.8%. Young offenders between 30 and 50%. That's all sex offenders, obviously. Sexual offender treatment, anger management, substance abuse. those are programs that are being considered and being looked at and being implemented as best we can. Cognitive behavioral therapy. Okay, next slide. Okay. Now, when it comes to community and restorative justice, we're looking at supervision, accountability for released offenders, and as the Honourable Minister rightly said, people get released on parole and they reoffend. So we've got to try and do something about that. So if they are released, we've got to try our best to make sure that they are brought into society in a proper manner. Sexual predators, we're looking at lots of, especially pedophiles. They're very smart, they're very conniving, they are very manipulative. So we deal with that sort of stuff that we've got to try and keep them away from, keep our children out of harm's way. And yeah, there we have that. Next slide. Post-conviction sex offender testing. That's the overview. Common in the US, common in the UK, it's growing globally. US has been doing that for quite some time, and with great success. The UK a couple of years ago started it as well, and the successes are definitely in our favor there. Okay, so this is the post-conviction treatment. Okay, so the idea is once a person is, let me see, where is that one? Don't know which is the light. Anyway, so you have your correctional service, your parole officers right at the top. Once a person has been convicted or is decided for him to be released on parole, your person right at the top would be the one that is monitoring it. You would have to your left here, well, the person in the orange overall is self-explanatory. The person to the left is your therapist that will be dealing with the rehabilitation of the offender. And to the right is your forensic psychophysiologist, also in layman's terms being referred to as the polygraph examiner. Okay, there are some common methods. Not going to go into that too detail, but there are very good treatment programs and monitoring programs as far as that is concerned. Next slide. Okay. The tools that we've got to look at, and I know that the Correctional Service is looking at proper monitoring when it comes to especially people being released on parole. But here are some of the things that one can do over and above what the therapists can do. So in other words, the therapist will be given his or her role to play, and the forensic psychophysiologist will then make sure that the person responds and cooperates with the treatment program. Okay. There we go. Admissible issues, polygraph results not used in court. Okay, that we can skip that one just for you. Okay, the polygraph accuracy is proven to be in the region of 81 to 91%. Supports disclosure and compliance. Critics, reliability, civil liberty stigma. All right, so where we are here with this is once a person has now been admitted to this program, and it's not automatic for anyone, for any sex offender to be released, there will be certain criteria attached to it. But also taken into account that there is a way that forward with regards to this specific program, it will definitely reduce the costs on the Department of Correctional Services, in the sense that if this guy or this person ever qualifies to become part of this parole system or this post-conviction sex offender training program, apart from the fact that he's got to be eligible for a full parole or to be released in this regard, the cost for, obviously, your correctional services there is overlooking it, but the three people work in conjunction with each other. So the parole officer will get feedback from the therapist, and also from the polygraph. So the sex offender will have to cooperate with the treatment that the therapist provides. Polygraph examiner makes sure that the person does not do all those naughty things, such as being alone with a minor child, and don't use drugs, don't watch pornography, etc. And also make sure that our children are safe during that program. The beauty of this is, if this person wants to be released under the program, the only cost would be that of the correctional service supervision official. You want to be part of this? You're going to pay for this lady sitting on my left, her treatment. You're going to pay for the one on the right. Where are you going to get the money? You want to be out of jail. You want to be a good person in society? You'll find the money. Sell a kidney. Okay. There we have it. Best practices, multiple sources. It's evidence-based treatment, ongoing staff training, transparent communication, emerging technologies for less intrusive monitoring. I know that the department, under the guidance of the minister, is also looking at better ankle bracelets and monitoring, which will be part of that. With the current legislation, we can implement this outright already, although with a bit of tweaking of certain of the laws that could even become more effective in the process. Okay, there's the role players, once again. And obviously, eligibility is determined by the minister and obviously the parole board. Okay. The benefits, as we mentioned earlier on, there's no cost of any medical treatment, anything of that sort, but it will obviously become a requirement for, that is my suggestion, yeah, is that whoever becomes part of this Piscot society, so to speak, will have to be properly licensed by the correctional services. That includes the therapist and also the polygraph examiner or forensic psychophysiologist for that matter. Okay, challenges and controversies. Yeah, obviously. Accuracy concerns, ethical dilemmas, potential false positive negatives. We try to eliminate that as best we can. I'm just saying that to the strongest critics out there. And then, obviously, Piscot is not a sole solution, but it's part of a comprehensive approach. Okay. Yeah, it's a complex. And for this to succeed, your therapist will have to be strong. Your parole supervision, correctional service person will also be of strong character, and also the forensic psychophysiologist. Sex offenders are very manipulative. As I said, it's not going to be easy ride for them. They'll have to abide by whatever rules set out. In other words, no drugs, no pornography, no being left alone with a minor child, no stalking, no. The list can still be determined. There we have it. That is the end of that slide. So in conclusion, closing, Honourable Minister, National Commissioner, distinguished delegates and invited guests, as I conclude, I wish to express my sincere appreciation for the opportunity to address you today on this vital matter. The challenges faced by our correctional system are complex, but they are not unsurmountable when we approach them with innovation, evidence-based practices, and a shared commitment to protecting society while restoring lives. The introduction of post-conviction sex offender testing is not about replacing the work already being done. It's about strengthening it. It's about providing parole boards, correctional officials, and practitioners with an additional tool to monitor compliance, encourage offender accountability, and ultimately reduce the risk of reoffending. I believe that together we can ensure that South Africa's correctional and parole systems continue to evolve in ways that balance justice, safety, and rehabilitation. Our collective responsibility to safeguard our communities, protect our children and other offenders, a genuine pathway to reintegration. Thank you once again for this honor and for your dedication to the building of a safer, stronger, and more just South Africa. Thank you.
IT, can you come and assist us in terms of the... For controls, yeah. Are you good? Is it controlling?
She will bring
Okay, you just adjust.
very well. A very good day to everyone, the judges, ministers, chief of staff, all invited guests, all protocol observe, good deputy ministers, regional commissioners and their teams, fellow parole board members, my colleagues, good morning. Good morning. I've got a very loud voice, so the parole board members often know that I attempt to move away from the mic a bit. I will attempt to problematize the opening statement or context given by the National Commissioner. I will move from there to also problematize what the minister said in his keynote address, and I will then leave you with thinking points as we allude or will go to our plenary sessions. These presentations, the first one I think, and the very one I'm now dealing with, highlights really the implications of the justice and rehabilitation and proposed reforms, yet not perfect. It also draws, and I like that the minister has done this morning, on the interventions, recent interventions by our minister, but it seeks to also situate them within the broader reform debates. It then employs other approaches and using empirical evidence that we have so far. In doing so, we pay cognizance on the work that has already been done. I think we're not moving. Okay. Which one? The other way around. Seems my slides are not moving. Thank you. Or they will control it from the back there. Now, I've already mentioned the approach adopted in the presentation very briefly and how it seeks to move and flow from the opening and the minister's remarks. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We pay careful attention to the work that has recently been done. It's there. It is for us in this conference to contextualize, debate, and reform. Next slide, please. But we should ask ourselves, what is the trigger for all of this? I would want to remind all of us, it's not long ago, there existed a question in Parliament about what the National Commissioner earlier on in his brief opening statement alluded to. The policy positioning paper on parole boards must be issued and published by the Department of Correctional Service to stop the alarming levels of reoffending. A reply by the minister recently highlighted the dangerous link, key for our discussion at our plenaries, between the parole policy failures and the ongoing gang and drug wars happening up in Cape Town. Next slide, please. At some stage, we read the JIC's report and that interaction during the Select Portfolio Committee meeting, where it also sought to outline major deficiencies and dysfunctionalities in the parole system, and also sought to call for a parole review. This last year and this year, we saw the rise and the increase in offenders reoffending. But I wish to say it was not only this year. 3-4 years ago, there was an alarming rate in Cape Town in the 6th administration of reoffending, where we saw the previous minister and Justice Desai, in response, they said, all those inmates who had been paroled, there will be an overall review of all those placements. And the question was how was that going to be done? And I have no information that such has been done. But we move on. This is just a simple case study to say in Cape Town something is happening. But not only in Cape Town, I will show you in the next few slides. Crucially, it seems that the debate, although triggered by rates of reoffending, there is a need for a more diverse planning and reform strategy which needs to be in place. Next slide, please. The trigger is very important, again, for our plenaries and discussions. There seems also to be a causal link between the combination of the rehabilitation in correctional facilities and the early release of violent offenders on one hand. This again, of course, many have said it invites a total overhaul of the parole policy, focus on risk-based assessment, and community impact approach. Next slide, please. Indeed, the minister has indicated in his key speech that he's a frank talker, that he doesn't pretend all is well. This enables then a platform for us at this conference to build and reform. But how do we do that? Next slide, please. Let us first maybe displace what is said to be the positioning paper as advanced earlier on by the National Commissioner, and subsequently laid down the goals of what was said to be the positioning paper. I flag this issue because I was shocked that in 2025, such a paper has not yet received much review, although it has gaps, rather larger gaps than before, of what is said to be a response or on reform in the parole system. There is endless litigation, mainly focused on the inefficiencies which led to delays in parole consideration and so forth. And I'm involved with quite a number of those litigations across the country as the coordinator. For instance, in the last, next slide, please. Have I gone too far? Maybe the first slide. Go back a bit. We will move one slide back. One slide back. For instance, in the Eastern Cape, their numbers are rising insofar as litigation is concerned. We have moved from the 6th administration where across the country, the department within a space of 1 month to 6 months would sit with 694 court applications brought by inmates to court, others individually representing themselves, others by lawyers. But for instance, in Eastern Cape alone, in the last 3 months in St. Albans area, PE, we have received 120 court applications. Now, what is a trend in the 7th administration? It seems that these inmates, although in the previous administration were complaining about a failure to consider or the delay, the applications are slowly now mutating to judicial review applications. It begins to tell you that whatever backlog was there is slowly being eradicated by the current administration. And judges and courts are now dealing with the review application of specific individuals. That's a very good sign. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. We would note that in the portfolio committee meeting, a presentation is made about reviving this positioning paper with the DCS, and also an overhaul seems to be premised on an amendment only of the Act. Next slide, please. There are some difficulties I have with that approach or that stance. The first difficulty I have with the positioning paper is that the reading of the paper itself does not provide any qualitative data which would assist to locate and contextualize the intended reform. There is absence in that paper any feasibility study. How then, I ask, do we assess the proposed reforms in the absence of data? That is very difficult. That's the difficulty I have with the positioning paper. The goals are there, but the data is absent. For instance, what will it cost for the new proposed tier parole regimes, which I call regionalization? There is absolutely no information regarding the cost of that and whether it's feasible to be done. It's lacking in the positioning paper. Like I said, I wanted to trouble waters by displacing the positioning paper so that we're able to discuss in our plenaries. There is a further problem that I have with the positioning paper, as alluded to by the National Commissioner. The workload of these entire CMC, Parole Board, and stakeholders, specialists, social workers, and psychologists. I say this because I'm directly involved with those specialists and Parole Board members, and I see them here. For instance, with 45 new court applications in Albans 2 months ago, we had no chairperson of the Parole Board. So if you are drafting an affidavit to explain to someone that you do not qualify, and at some stage to me, I said, we can't make ministers sign an affidavit which is going to say you do not qualify. We do not have a chairperson. We resorted to having the secretary of the Parole Board to tell court that you do not qualify, you are not a partner, and so forth, because we didn't have a chairperson. In other words, if we didn't have that chairperson at St. Albans, it means there were no sittings taking place. Move across the Transkei in Mthatha. This year alone, we were then faced with a situation about 2 to 3 months of a rotating chairperson of the Parole Board who comes from Lusikisiki and was servicing Wellington and was servicing, at some stage she was sitting in East London, she says, and also across the Ciskei area in Queenstown, just forgot the name of the prison. She was overstretched, overworked. She didn't even have time to consult with us in preparations and so forth. So these are small, but yet have a big impact in trying to solve the bigger problem. Often when I meet parole boards, I am told the new contracts of the parole boards have now been sorted. I see the parole board have now been sorted or extended. But at some stage, 2-3 years ago, we were faced with a situation in Kimberley, Northern Cape, where we faced about close to 193 applications coming from Tswelopelo. And it was December. And we were due to file, and the chairperson told us at the time, in no uncertain term, my contracts have not been renewed, so we are not working. So we struggled during that time. Of course, there are other issues where I've noted in Newcastle, KZN, they're not less about the parole board and CMC, but more about the specialists. It seems that the areas do not attract specialists such as psychologists and social workers. I think 2 months ago, they were still looking for a psychologist in Newcastle. And that is over an extended period of time, and that's where the backlogs come from. In Free State and Northern Cape, the issue of transfers with inmates having been transferred from Eastern Cape and other places, I see of recent there is a move to move some of the inmates who were transferred to those centers back to their original centers. But those transfers impact on the victim-offender dialogues not taking place, thereby leading to the backlogs. Because in other words, people are not in their place of origin, they've been transferred to Mangaung for an extended period of time. And the victim-offender dialogues are not taking place, or the tracing of victims thereof. What I call in our parole boards training, the unholy war, the rate of profiles returns in the center in between stakeholders. I was happy at some stage the department had adopted a quality assurance approach between the various tiers, between the CMC and the parole board and the region and so forth, to quality assure the profiles, especially of those of lifers going to the minister. Lo and behold, I did not foresee that such an approach in itself will bring about delays. In other words, we now have another compounded backlog caused by a profile which would have moved from CMC, and it's seated somewhere at area commissioner's office for a period of 2 to 3 months because it's still being quality assured. That causes delay in themselves. And then again, it goes to the parole board, then before it goes to the region, another quality assurance takes place. It's a good thing, but it's now compounding the backlog. In other words, inasmuch it is pleasant to read the positioning paper, but it's totally impractical to pay cognizance to it without the data. Also, the focuses of the indicators in the positioning paper are somewhat, from the face of it, indicative what the problem is with the positioning paper. It attempts to look only at the positive factors, but it ignores, quite vitally, for instance, the assessment of victim satisfaction rate in the VOD process. It's not there. The reoffending rates and victim attitudes, not there. The reintegration measure without proven results, for instance, of the halfway house. What are the proven results of this intervention? Absent. Why I differ with the positioning paper is for the following reasons. It is an argument that I will make at the plenary that the parole system itself is not ineffective because of an inadequate legislation, but rather is a result of a poor planning and even worse execution. Imagine a situation where we adopt the positioning paper without any feasibility study, without any data, and we move forward. It attempts to make us think that by adopting it, we have solved the problem. I argue that we need to go a step backward and reevaluate the position. Plan better. Inadequate training, for instance, is not dealt with. Poor management. Reporting channels with CMC and Parole Board and others. Supervision and lack of accountability. There's a lot happening this down at the center levels with our stakeholders. Who is who reports to who? Are parole board members supposed to be seized with the question of overcrowding? But the AC wants to see that there must be some interventions, release people. Is that should be considered as an external influence or internal influence if we're told we need to we need to release people to create space? Is that the question that the parole board should be seized with primarily? They tell me that most of the time, and I'm speaking from a lived experience because I interact with these people on a daily basis in my life. In other words, I argue that the changing of legislation will have very little impact unless training and supervision and management are addressed. Let's also create a conducive environment. Conducive environment, leave for parole boards, there's still a question there. Mind you that the CMCs and the parole boards, of course, also other work to deal with. The determinate sentences and so forth. I feel that there are few hands, but many people to deal, many inmates to deal with. And that is what the root problem is. At some stage, I think it's a month ago, I'm told, but it's unverifiable claims that, well, it depends who's inmate, or so who is the inmate. At some stage, there is a call that some inmates even pay for their profiles to move. Others prefer for their profiles to stay until they complete all the programs because they're afraid the profiles will come back. Of course, the presentation goes on to deal with, the next slide please, 2 slides forward. The interventions by the minister in the 7th administration. clearing the backlog, risk-based decisions and referrals, stronger ministerial oversight, and alternatives incarceration, self-sufficiency projects. But those proposals, those interventions are not without problems themselves. For instance, if you look at the progress reporting given in Parliament on the 13th of May 2025, we are being told in 2025 there are gaps in Eastern Cape on the leadership. You have understaffing in Comco. Then how do you monitor? That's why maybe we have the Lusikisiki massacre. Also tied into that, quite recent, when Minister Bheki Cele 2-3 years ago says taxi violence was linked to people in prison. It wasn't a lie. 3 months down the line in that year, we released about 3-4 inmates. Those inmates died in the taxi violence. In fact, they were the perpetrators of the taxi violence. Week after week after if in Eastern Cape, they all died. They emerged from Umtata management area. Where there we were failed, we had been calling for a risk assessment by SAPS. But when the risk assessment came, it was positive. And Minister placed 2 weeks down the line, those people were out carrying guns, and they subsequently, all of them are deceased. There were 6 or 7 of them. The minister indicates, I've already made an indication. Next slide, please. The measures that have been adopted by his office. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Now, although I have briefly outlined the interventions by the minister, but there are some major gaps in the proposition made. There's a debate that is currently happening between ourselves and the Parole. It doesn't seek the approach or the proposals as they stand. It doesn't seek to address the issues of transparency. The debate is ongoing between who classifies, the debate is about classification of offenders. There's a debate in the ministry, I myself involved, and in the centers about whether a person is called medium risk or low risk or moderate. It seems that this language, we are talking past each other because the specialists have said, we don't understand why the minister then has to further provide this person if we have said medium risk, because in our profession it is acceptable, it's medium risk. But what do you mean medium risk? Is it moderate? But it's high. The fact that it's medium. So there's a reservation. There's an ongoing debate between specialists. I think clarity must be brought in the use of terminology there, because we're talking past each other. Next slide, please. Of course, also the proposals by the minister have not directly addressed the socio-economic inequalities that disadvantage indigent inmates in parole hearings, such as access to legal aid. We have not talked about the blind, the deaf, those people who can't speak. I think we should extend our debate to develop policies around or aimed at those. Having highlighted the proposed reforms, I only propose themes. And these themes, of course, these slides will be provided. These are themes I feel should be the starting point in revising the positioning paper, guiding our discussions. For instance, digitization, it's all you see, it's coffee time we should have had. Yes, it's almost coffee time. Right. We saw this, I remember having a discussion with the National Commissioner, say, why should we not have actually hearings? Digital hearings. We're living in the age of new media. That enhances the process themselves, ensuring quality as well, and strengthening community corrections, victim participations via restorative justice. I'm moving past some of these points because there are other speakers who will speak to these issues about restorative justice and other issues. But possible reforms, we should actually set priority pillars in revising the positioning paper. A risk-based parole decision. There seems to be in the court applications or few judgments that have emerged that there is a lack in return risk rationale of every decision. For instance, there's always a risk assessment, and the tools now used in the risk assessment. There's no clarity there. And you would find that although I had complained 5 years ago that the parole boards, by and large, the recommendations were cut and paste, they've moved away from that. The parole board's recommendations are much more improved, but the rationale is still lacking. You have to find it somewhere. So more training is needed to find the rationale insofar as the recommendations are concerned. And assessment of recommendations and decisions. The responses to violations. Implement a national sanction for technical breaches, warnings, reporting, treatment, referrals. And I say this, and I'm seeing my time is running up. I say this because I have always seen that there is an institutional file of an offender. An offender who would have committed gross crimes and had sanctions. Those sanctions do not make it to the G326. And then in the G326, it's all well, it's clean, no violations. Bring me the institutional file. Violations are of an arm's length. So these institutional file doesn't talk to the G326, but the recommendations are positive. That this person must be placed on parole. And a reading of the specialist reports is somewhat, and I've seen that the minister is heavily engaged in this thing. What does the report of the social worker say? What does the report of the psychologist? Imagine now one is moving way beyond the recommendations of the CMC and the parole board because they would have failed to pay careful attention to those nitty-gritties. With my time limited, the slides shall be made available. There are other propositions being made, but for sake of progress and time, let me, at this stage, conclude and say, the parole system remains inefficient with weak oversight. The minister's initiatives, although correct and in the right direction, but there are major gaps. The positioning paper needs major revision and review and alignment. For that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate and Mr. Lombard. We really appreciate the input. I've tried to be very, very generous because we were ahead of schedule, and I tried to give much time to this item because the 15 minutes sharing was not good when they were just poking on the matters of the deficiencies, because those we need to hear. And it's good that it's given by people that work with us, but independently, so they will give us their opinion as practitioners, as they work, because sometimes as correctional services, we become defensive. So we thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. We are also joined, let me acknowledge Judge Stephen Kuni, from the Johannesburg High Court. You are most welcomed. And I'm still awaiting the acting Judge President. Once she's here, I'll be also acknowledging. We're really honored, Minister, that the decision makers sometimes, they will feel this frustration. Judge Cameron, if they understand and how other decisions impact on our day-to-day, it's going to make life easier because we must find ourselves as the this session as a department working with the other sector departments. We will be taking tea break, 11 o'clock now, just a 15 minutes. It's here. Our leadership and the guest of the minister will go back to where they had tea. By Korapas, we should be seated. And we take the next presentations. There's last two presentations, which they share 20 minutes, if I'm correct. And we'll try and stick to time so that we give a session to Q&As. Let's do that. We know there's a lot of us here. Let's try and be back exactly at 11:15 seated so that we start. Thank you very much. If we can't support our own SSF, who will? So that is why we're making sure that we support it. Let's settle down so that we can move with our program. This program that we're embarking on, it coincides exactly with the Corrections Week. And the Corrections Week starts between the 22nd and the 28th of September, so that we promote the awareness and understanding of the correction system. So that is why we chose this day. It's key. When the presentation was done, the minister said, yes, Corrections Week. And what are the activities that we do sometimes during this Corrections Week? There are some prayers. Last year we had prayers. Today we are reviewing the parole system. Because as we do this awareness and the understanding of the correction system, it is key also to say, how do we usually as management areas participate? Sometimes there's stakeholder engagement, prayer day, also community izimbizos. But this is key for us that we understand why we chose specifically this day. Because people must understand their involvement and also their recognition in terms of being involved as we do our VODs and then we do these things. So I said I must share with you those things that are critical to us and making sure why is it so significant. Because these awareness, sometimes you'll think people know and understand, and yet they don't. So with that being said, we're zooming straight to the next presenters on the Zeta Scale Risk Assessment Tool by Professor Rustenberg from the University, Northwest University. As he comes forward, may Professor Skuman from the UNESA be ready, so that as we conclude with these sessions, we make sure that we zoom into Q&As. But we will not take many Q&As from the plenary, because we will be breaking to commissions, where a lot of work will be happening. But because our presenters can't be all over the commissions, just ask clarity-seeking question, and Advocate Mpatlwa said we'll avail this presentation so that some of the things they've skipped, you can deliberate more on those as presentations are shared to those commissions. So with that being said, Professor, over to you. Thank you. Let's encourage him with a big round of applause.
Dear ministers, deputy ministers, dignitaries, delegates who are here, it's a privilege for me to present to you today. I will be offering two perspectives, or speaking from two perspectives. That is to say, if we can get the first page of that presentation up. I want to say that I am representing myself here, but also a colleague of mine, Dr. Mariki Smit, who is Regional Coordinator Care in the Gauteng region of Correctional Services. She was my PhD candidate, and we did this project pretty much together. She's been in the correctional environment, working as a social worker for more than 28 years. So I believe she has a very, very good and solid understanding of the contextual matters. That is why this presentation today is flying the flag of correctional services and not the Northwest University. But Dr. Smith is ill and not able to be here today, so, but this is our joint presentation. So my two perspectives. One, I'm a scientist. I'm a social worker originally. I have been a professor in social work for many years. at different institutions, currently at Northwest University. So as a scientist, I have a primary interest in developing measurement tools and scales, specifically in the psychosocial environment and context. So that's my one perspective. My other perspective is from a business perspective. So I have a huge interest in business process optimization, which I believe is something that we need in this context, specifically regarding the practices, the assessment practices of social workers. And what I intend to do is, I want you to think about a concept that is pretty much in the news, and that is the Internet of Things, or the 4IR revolution, industrial revolution. So the solutions that I will be presenting today is pretty much from those two perspectives. What I want to propose is that we look at the implementation and the adjustment of social work assessments as an important role in the process of parole. And that I want to do by introducing to you the Zeta scale for global social work outcomes measurement within the correctional services context. So this scale has been developed already. We started development in 2013, and we have tested it in the correctional context where Dr. Smith is practicing. So we trained social workers in using the scale. We had them work with the scale as supportive to their assessments, and then we evaluated the scale's properties on the one hand, and we also looked at what is the utility value. So if we look at I think the previous slide gives us more or less the content of what I will be speaking about. So I want to tell you a little bit about the scale, and then I want to propose a way forward on how we can optimize the practices of social work, how we can develop data or obtain data. The problem with social workers, and this I say with all compassion to the profession and with all due respect to the fantastic and wonderful work that social workers perform, even in this context, they are truly experts. But I want to say the limitation to social work assessments is that we often lack that quantitative attitude towards what we do. Social workers are very good. They're heart people. They work with their hearts, and they are able to qualitatively interpret situations, observe situations, but they struggle sometimes to put this into a numerical format. And that's why we wanted to develop this scale. This scale is not going to replace the social worker. It's not going to require a major adjustment of what they do in everyday practice, but it is going to assist them, support them in providing a more scientific, quantitative outcome. So that is basically what we want to achieve with this presentation. So if we can go to the next slide. So the purpose of the Zeta scale is then to, let me just go to that slide. It's a global social work outcome. So the social worker can use this scale to observe offender behavior, and specifically his ability to improve him or herself during in-facility offender psychosocial treatment. I'm not sure if you are familiar with completing tests and scales and so on. Sometimes, or most of these instruments require you, if we want to assess your, let's say, your intelligence, you have to complete a test and we interpret that. Within the correctional context, it's my belief that this doesn't work very well. So we So we utilize this, we leave the assessment in the hands of the social worker when they use the scale. So it measures 12 aspects of an offender's ability. They can use it routinely. In other words, they can perform this kind of observation and measurement as much as they want to. From day one, they can actually use it on a daily basis in observing their clients. The instrument enables you to rate the abilities of the offender, and you will see on that 7-point algorithm is basically the scale on which we do it. And there's a cutoff value represented by that dotted line, which is the point above that a person is able to function properly and has enough abilities to improve themselves. Whereas below that, in various ranges, scale ranges, the person is not able to do so. So it gives you, on the 13 dimensions, if you look at this radar graph, this is basically different scores that are overlaid on this radar diagram. And those are the 13 aspects that we can measure or rate with this instrument. So it provides a visual tool to the social workers, but also it generates data, quantitative data, which we can analyze. So the larger the picture becomes, you know, the better, because that represents an improvement in the person's functioning, his abilities. All right? So these 13 dimensions were developed by extensively interviewing social workers, hundreds of them over time, in order to get to these dimensions. Right, so if we can go to the next slide, please. So the main features of this instrument is the social aspects, and you will know that there are multiple aspects or multiple facets of social. Social is probably one of the most difficult things to measure. But these 12 dimensions, we believe, captures most of those areas. So as I've said, the colored areas in the zeta graph indicate the overall current level of functioning in an offender, while the uncolored area indicates the offender's inabilities and areas for improvement. The zeta has a uniform language, and that is one of its advantages. If we are able to train all the social workers in using this instrument, they have a common language, and especially I believe that is very important when you consider parole or readiness for parole, is that if we speak the same language, there will be less error in our estimation of whether a person is able to be returned to society. The 7 levels of ability indicate the burden of intervention and the person's potential to function independently. The interesting thing is when we tested this, the question of manipulation and impression management and so forth, because the stakes are high in this context, was considered. And the social workers actually reported that they were better able to consider the prospects of manipulation in their assessments after they started using this instrument. So the repeated use of the tool improves the evaluative reliability over time. So I want to state it categorically that the instrument has been developed, all right? We have validated it, so it has the relevant psychometric properties, but we have not begun an evaluation of what it can do in terms of all the data that can be collected by using the scale. So the repeated use of it is something that one needs to then evaluate as time goes by to see whether it has the necessary specificity and sensitivity to accurately determine a person's ability. But that is all into the future. So regarding the, we can go on to the next slide, please. Regarding the utility value of the progress and challenges in the rehab process, the offender progress profiles could be better measured against the profiles of other offenders, which is one of the advantages of this instrument. So it gives a uniform numerical comparison system that is fairer to the offender and will prevent, from errors creeping into the process. So systematic is the key word. Risk assessment, it was easier to identify areas that caused offenders to relapse and reoffend. You can even observe and predict change in client behavior and social functioning at any time during the interventions. So all of that lies in the potential of this instrument that we can actually predict into the future. The repeated use averaged out irregularities and created a more stable and uniform conclusion across cases. And I'm sure you are probably a little bit familiar with large language data models and things like that. A lot of the error can be averaged out and irregularities can be averaged out if you analyze large databases such as could be done with this instrument. Regarding the interventions, the social workers received more effective feedback on what they needed to change in their interventions to make them more accurate and precise. The supervisors could easily see what interventions were needed and what had to be changed. So we can go to the next slide. The benefit to the social workers. They reported that applying the Zeta gave them new insights into the information required for the change process and writing their progress reports. The social workers were able to use the standardized Zeta vocabulary in their reports, improving overall uniformity and system in their assessments, common language. The reports became more professional and scientifically founded by adding and discussing the Zeta graphs as empirical proof in support of their claims of change. Improvement in skills. The participating social workers became better skilled in observing the 12 areas over time as they started using the scale. Their critical thinking skills were reportedly improved. Their objectivity improved when assessing and evaluating client social functioning. Their insight levels improved and they became more aware of the role of motivation in client behavior. So it appears from this that using the instrument gave a better rounded and overall performance advantage to the social workers. So in conclusion, the Zeta holds significant promise for delivering more effective psychosocial interventions at the correctional facilities. It can play an active role in a more systematic, balanced and evaluation of parole suitability. It can even be used once a person is on parole by continuing those measurements and then combining it with other metrics such as produced by the tagging system that has been discussed in some circles. So the core benefit, it produces uniform metrics versus, if you don't use the instrument, individualized descriptive reports that have to be qualitatively appraised and analyzed before meaning making. So in order to take this further, one would need to have, and this is my last slide, one would need to have an implementation strategy. And what we are calling for or asking for is to have a pilot implementation of the Zeta in the Gauteng to test it further and to take it forward. We have a formal Zeta training program because quality assurance would be important. It's not a scale that you just hand out to somebody and they can use it from tomorrow, you know. It has to be properly implemented and trained. Quality assurance must be checked. Hence, we look at all these possibilities in this slide to create, for example, an analytics system that analyzes the data obtained from these scales and begins to work on how we can use it in a predictive capacity. You know, AI. Set up a support infrastructure to validate the Zeta towards ensuring excellence in these assessment practices. So, in a nutshell, you know, that would be our call, is please give us the opportunity to take this further and evaluate the implementation of this instrument. After all, if we can measure it, we can manage it. Okay, our last slide really talks about some steps in how we intend to implement it. And yes, it would call for continuous engagement and involvement with the system, the target system, to ensure that we can roll it out eventually. The initial process, we would say, would take about 2 years, but it can take much longer if we have to implement it all over. And then lastly, these are my contact details and also my co-developer in this, and also Dr. Mariki Smith's details. And with that, I am sure we are going to have an opportunity to talk about it further and to answer questions about it. But this is what I have to deliver to you today. Thank you very much.
Baie dankie, Prof. Ja, ons is amper daar nou. We will be taking another presentation, but let me also acknowledge our NCCS chairperson, Judge Molokadi Setosa, and also Justice, is it Mutumi or Musumi? Muchumi. Hey, kore ya mpalela. Mara ke nagana gore I'm a South African. And ke ka bua ekanprat ngingathetha ndingakhuluma isikhethu ngingakhuluma nesizulu ndiyathatha nyani ninabulabula yeah, so you are acknowledged, and also let's acknowledge all our parole boards across our regions. The Gauteng region parole boards that are here, just stand up and wave. Baie dankie, Dase. Let's give them a round of applause. They do a serious work. Our parole boards from the LMN region. And so, okay. Our parole boards from KZN. Our parole boards from the Eastern Cape region. Aha, hey, Mtetwa. Short, lapha yini beyingekho flight. Was there no flights from Umtata and East London? And then our parole boards from the Free State, Northern Cape region. Baba fela. Kuri lampalela, wait. Our parole boards from the Western Cape. That's say, Signala, who feels Mares Alemane, vast fromance. Exu Provence work to a net. Hey, Minister. Net to a fromance. Ay, that's geen fromance. Wat gebeur, Weskap? Who know? Thank you very much. We really appreciate your attendance and being here because this is critical to your work. Thank you very much. Now on through Professor Skuman on refining recidivism and possible reduction strategies. Over to you, Prof. Dase. As a
dressed as beautifully as you are, but yes.
Yeah, it's been man. Why here also, ne? That's say.
Honourable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Commissioners, all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is absolutely my privilege this morning to talk to you about a topic that, as the Minister reminded us this morning, oh, can we go one slide back? 2 slide backs? There we are. As the Minister reminded us this morning, that has both conceptual and operational challenges for many years. In many ways, today feels for me like coming full circle. As residivism was also the focus of my doctorate, which I completed in 2004, while being a social worker at the Department of Correctional Services at Baviaanspoort Maximum Prison for nearly 10 years. The decision to focus on this topic was not haphazard. Colleagues in the Directorate for Correctional Programs advised me that research on residivism was a departmental priority and a concern that urgently needs attention. Now, more than 20 years later, I am standing before you once again, engaged with this critical issue, one where many of the challenges identified by me and other colleagues subsequently who did research in this topic still remains unresolved. This brings to mind the wise words of the Commissioner Tobagali, I don't know if you remember, at the Criminological Association of Africa's conference that I attended. He asked us, how will the knowledge generated and shared during this conference translate into real improvements in practice? In other words, how do we ensure that what we discuss do not remain mere lip service or empty dialogue? The question is also relevant for this summit. In my presentation, I will firstly focus on defining residivism, and thereafter I will look at some positive measures to potentially improve and manage mere residivism. Next slide, please. Now, in South Africa, the recidivism rate is estimated to be between 47 to 97%. But in essence, the term residivism is used as an academic policy and political buzzword as a measurement of success or failures of programs and or as a general, I think sometimes, explanation for South Africa's high crime rate. In reality, residivism is defined on an ad hoc basis tailored to the operational needs of researchers and organizations rather than being grounded in consistent and universally accepted meaning. Because there is no uniform definition, residivism statistics in South Africa are as dissimilar as comparing apples, oranges, and pears, leaving us with what Beck described as a fruit salad concept. The consequence is that until we establish clarity and consistency in how residivism is defined and measured, it serves little purpose to design strategies aimed at addressing the residivism rate. After all, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Next slide, please. So, the word residivism is derived from the Latin word residivere, meaning to fall back. It refers to the repetition of negative behavior patterns in a criminal justice context. This implies that a recidivist is somebody that's not rehabilitated, somebody who relapsed into crime, leading to rearrest, reconviction, and sentencing. Although it seems straightforward, interpreting residivism data requires clear criteria. My analysis of leading scholars' interpretation highlights 4 core themes that I think we should consider. The criteria of unconditional further commission of crime questions whether recidivism should be defined by the type of offense or by the mere act of committing any crime. regardless of its nature and severity. In other words, if a person should be classified as a recidivist because of repeated violations of the law, not because of the specific offence committed. Unconditional sentencing raises the question of whether somebody is a recidivist only after being sentenced to imprisonment, or if any other sentence like community corrections, a fine, or so on, also qualifies. While opinions differ, the majority consensus is that a recidivist is about, or recidivism is about repeated offending, not just an imprisonment history. With regards to habitual or career offending or criminal behavior, we can distinguish between two groups, namely frequent offenders that persistently commit crimes and occasional offenders whose crimes are rare or situational. This raises two key questions, namely, should occasional offenders be classified as recidivists? And how many offences must one commit before you can be classified as a recidivist? Lastly, a desistance period should be established to guide when a person is classified as a recidivist. This refers to the time between the end of a sentence and the commission of a new crime. If offending occurs within the stipulated period, the person would be considered a recidivist. If it occurs after, then they would not. So here I think that section 271B of the Criminal Procedure Act that deals with record expungements could perhaps give us some guidelines and might be something that we consider in the commissions. Next slide, please. While the mentioned criteria will be explored further in commission, specifically Commission 2 tomorrow, I have taken the liberty of proposing a draft definition to serve as a guideline. So, in my opinion, recidivism is a behavioral pattern whereby an offender previously found guilty of a crime and sentenced by a court of law commits a further unspecified offence within the desistance period, which we will determine, is again found guilty and receives an additional sentence. Now, one of the key challenges in defining recidivism is a lack of consensus and urgency across the criminal justice sector. So I therefore want to challenge the Department of Correctional Services to lead by example and be the forerunners in adopting a departmental definition to inform policy and guide practice. Next slide, please. So, once a definition is in place, the first step in managing recidivism is building a system for accurate statistics. Current intake and management practices pose major obstacles with manual data and paper-based record keeping, leaving room for errors and inefficiencies, while backlogs at the Criminal Record Centre further delay SAP 69 information. From the offender's side, many missing identity documents and the use of aliases make it very difficult to identify repeat offenders at admission. So, although DCS cannot take responsibility for the work of other departments, it can still strengthen its own processes by developing accurate records for offenders in both imprisonment and community corrections. Now, internationally, the use of fingerprint biometrics are seen as a best practice, as they centralize data, streamline identification, and reduce errors. A promising step in this direction is the CSIR's development of a handheld biometric scanner, which was reported by them to have been implemented or piloted at Gosimampura and Johannesburg centres to replace manual verification of admissions and movements. Now, using such biometric systems in both correctional centres and for community corrections could strengthen management and contribute to obtaining accurate recidivism statistics, at least within the Department of Correctional Services. Next slide, please. Now, while accurate statistics are vital, it's also important to have reliable risks, needs assessments. Without them, rehabilitation path plans cannot be effectively address recidivism. Now, let's be honest. The current G303 tool is inadequate as assessment tool because it reduces assessment, which is supposed to be an in-depth endeavor, behavior, motives, and criminogenic risks. This, in my opinion, leads to poor risk screening and misdirected interventions. Now, in corrections, risk is often emphasized, but understanding what supports desistance is just as important. Risk and desistance can be seen as two sides of the same coin. In this regard, the risk, needs, and responsibility model predicts reoffending targets, dynamic risk factors, and guidance evidence-based interventions, while the Good Lives model builds skills, coping strategies, and social support to sustain crime-free living. Together, they offer a complementary approach, one managing risk and the other empowering desistance. Now, to be effective in rehabilitation programs must align with risks and needs, and they must be research-informed and regularly evaluated for effectiveness. Regarding assessment, the following tools are recommended as research conducted in South African context confirmed their reliability, and as we heard, are in the process of going through the process of such confirmation. Now, the Self-Appraisal Questionnaire, or the SAQ, which is grounded in the RNR model, is a self-administered tool that predicts violent and non-violent recidivism, identifies criminogenic needs, and informs security-level intervention and release decisions. Extensive research has been done on this tool within a correctional environment, and its effectiveness has been proven to predict risk, identifying criminogenic needs, and support international placement decisions, all of which are operationally significant. And then also, like we just heard, the Zeta scale also shows a lot of promise. So, using such tools might also assist with dealing or developing information or a uniform understanding of terms like minimum, medium, or maximum, which we heard a previous speaker says is one of the challenges that's currently experienced as well. Next slide, please. Now, effective rehabilitation programs are essential to address recidivism. The R&R model emphasizes that the most intensive interventions should target high-risk offenders with the greatest potential of rehabilitation. This ensures resources are used effectively by addressing criminogenic needs and tailored interventions to individual responsibility or responsivity factors. Now, correctional services sentencing plans must therefore be R&R based. Now, regarding current practices, I picked up some areas of concern or challenges. Currently, correctional programs is only available for offenders serving sentences longer than 24 months. Interestingly, in the Correctional Act, it states 12 months, so that is also something that I picked up that piqued my interest. This is a missed opportunity. As research shows, first-time and short-term offenders, or those in community corrections, are often more responsive to interventions. Their social and family ties are often more intact, and they face less institutionalization and stigma than long-term inmates. Targeting these groups, therefore, increases the probability of preventing reoffending. Most programs, including the pre-release program at the moment, are delivered by correctional officials with little or no therapeutic behavior modification and or counseling training. Programs are furthermore non-therapeutic and didactic, focusing mainly on awareness, information, and basic life skills. Only offenders who are flagged for requiring in-depth therapeutic interventions are referred to social workers or psychologists. Now, the question in this regard is, without proper assessment, how is that determination made? Next slide, please. So, to overcome these challenges, it's recommended that rehabilitative services and integration planning should be implemented from the very beginning of an offender's sentence. This establishes rehabilitation as a core purpose of a sentence, minute preparation for parole or reintegration, and thereby increasing the chances of sustained desistance. Correctional sentencing plans should be developed as part of the admission procedure, using validated risk and needs assessments like the SAQ and potentially the Zeta scale. Program eligibility should be broadened beyond offenders serving sentences longer than 3 months, because early intervention could prevent escalation into chronic offending and reduce recidivism rates. Shift from didactic awareness raising to structured evidence-based therapeutic interventions by making use of trained facilitators should be considered and applied as a good practice. Importantly, appoint more psychologists, social workers, and specialist professionals such as criminologists to assist with program design and delivery. Currently, 78, if my statistic is correct, psychologists is appointed in the Department of Correctional Services, meaning that one psychologist is responsible for more than 2,700 inmates, while we've got 591 social workers, which indicate a caseload of one social worker for every 277 inmates. Now, these ratios are far below what is required for consistent individualized treatment and imply that most offenders never received direct therapeutic intervention. Instead, they only attend generic programs delivered by case managers or officials with no clinical training. Preparation for offender reintegration should be an ongoing focus, not only a pre-release event, and include targeted psychosocial interventions, skills development and education, and the building of family and community systems. Now, community corrections officials should be part of this process from early on to plan for parole or post-release supervision. This will ensure continuity in services and effective aftercare. Now, an integrated support system should be established through formal arrangements and MOUs with non-governmental organizations and government departments to ensure the coordinated effort of services. Because, as Minister Groenewald reminded us, that corrections is a societal responsibility. Information about these services must be made available to offenders to enable them to access these services and to build sustainable community support networks. Rehabilitation should therefore not be an add-on. The shift in emphasis should be from serving time to using time productively, which is the heart of reducing recidivism. Next slide, please. Now, parole is meant to be to support social reintegration. Yet it remains high-risk phase for offending. Challenges such as unemployment, substance abuse, broken family ties, limited education, and I can go on and on and on, increase the risk of recidivism, including stigmatization. Without sustained social, psychological, and community support, parolees are far more likely to relapse and commit further crimes. Now, reoffending is thus linked not only to a gap in rehabilitation, but also to weak community-based support, underscoring the need for stronger involvement of families, communities, and other stakeholders. I examined some of DCS policies and their annual reports from 2010 onwards. And there are some areas of concern that I picked up. Firstly, the draft halfway house policy identify halfway houses as critical for offenders without a monitorable address, as it contributes to, and the purpose of the halfway house policy is that it wants to contribute to dealing with overcrowding and reducing reoffending through reintegration support. Now, this policy that was up for review in 2022-2023, this policy was up for review. The purpose of the review was to include a funding model, broaden eligibility, and build on lessons learned. Now, I'm not sure if that review has taken place because I could not find anything. Although several annual reports consistently highlight halfway houses as central to reintegration, facilities declined from 7 in 2020 to 1 in 2023, with none reported in 2024. The Parole draft position paper called for effective assessment systems to identify risk and reintegration needs, with interventions starting at admission and continuing throughout sentencing. Similarly, the social reintegration framework approved in 2020 and 2021 proposed supervision, interventors, and partnership with state agencies, NPOs, municipalities, and tertiary centers to improve employability and long-term outcomes through skills training, entrepreneurship, job preparation, and financial literacy. It also outlines practical support that should be provided for parolees, such as financial aid, clothing, tools for artisans, grant applications, and access to NGOs and government services. While it remains unclear to what extent these strategies are implemented and if support is made available to parolees, they recommend a strong recommendation as they could reduce reoffending by meeting parolees' socio-economic needs and helping them to become self-sustainable. Or self-sustained, rather. Now, annual reports also mentored interventions such as imbizos, which raise awareness of parolees' needs and reoffending risk within communities, and victim-offender dialogue, which provides restorative opportunities for offenders to make amends and victims to find closure. Now, these appear to be the only interventions that's consistently implemented. But the effectiveness is not evaluated, so we do not know what the impact of these interventions are. Other initiatives that I picked up that piqued my interest is ex-offender desks, which was introduced in 2019, but it fell short because only 13 of the 23 plans were established, and thereafter it was discontinued. Likewise, the ex-offender conference held in 2015, which gave parolees a platform to voice concerns, was also never repeated again. The decline in halfway houses, the discontinuation of initiatives, and the uncertainty about the implementation of interventions outlined in the Parole draft position paper and social reintegration framework highlights a serious gap. Limited community support remains a major concern and must be urgently addressed, as it plays a critical role in addressing residivism. Next slide, please. So, one of the biggest challenges in reintegration is a lack of sustainable funding and difficulties to maintain partnerships with NPOs that manages facilities. Without the support, aftercare remains weak and parolees are at great risk of reoffending. So I propose some solutions or potential solutions. The first solution is to strengthen risk and needs-based assessment, as already mentioned. And this, as mentioned, should start from assessment throughout the sentencing process. Accommodation support is also critical. Parolees without a monitorable address face serious barriers. Reviving and expanding halfway houses, which sustain funding by sustained funding models and forming of partnerships with community-based organizations and private sector, will ease overcrowding and provide stability that supports reintegration and will also address then residivism. But reintegration is about more than housing. The socio-economic realities that increases the risk of reoffending must also be addressed. This means providing practical support, such as financial assistance, clothing, tools of trade, and access. It also means building clear employment pathways through training entrepreneurship programs and subsidized work opportunities. These proposals are not new, but they are already included in the Parole draft position paper. They just need to be implemented. Awareness of services is another gap. A national database of reintegration services available should be available to offenders through or parolees through community corrections officers. This will help them in order to access the services. Finally, aftercare must be strengthened. Reintroducing ex-offenders desk as a national call center. Think about this. Accessible by phone, WhatsApp, and other digital platforms could provide tailored counseling and link parolees to resources. With trained counselors and a digitized register, such a system could extend support even to rural areas and become a cost-effective, scalable model for ongoing reintegration. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I just summarized some of my recommendations. I don't know if I've got time to go through them. Madam MC? No? Okay, so then I'm going to skip it and I will share my slide. So, next slide, please. I would like to end this presentation with more wise words from Commissioner Obakhali. I can see he's smiling because he knows what's coming. He also shared this with us at the Crimson Conference, namely that we should count days, not years. This is also my challenge to you, to prevent us from gathering again in a few years' time to address the very same challenges. Now, I recognize that there are significant barriers that may hamper progress, including funding constraints, staff shortages, and the need for stronger collaboration with other departments in the criminal justice cluster. As Minister Groenewald highlighted during the recent 2025 DCS budget vote in the National Assembly, I also acknowledge that the proposed recommendations in this presentation may seem like aspirational dreams. Yet, dreams are the blueprints for reality. Once we act on them, they become goals and, when implemented, actions. And as Minister Groenewald also correctly stated, I watched it actually last night in a very recent interview, is how do we address challenges like eating an elephant, bite by bite? So it's an honor to collaborate with you today, and I'm looking forward to possibly the possibility of continuing this partnership beyond the summit. I thank you.
Thank you very much, NC. They quote you. Quotations from years, ne? And the minister. Thank you very much, Prof. We really appreciate that. And now it's 12:15 and 12:30. We should be taking. We will be taking a Q&A. But what is key also on this presentation is that the support and networks after our parolees are reintegrated to communities. Earlier on, when I was speaking to the Minister of Social Development, like you are saying, working together, it's key. She said, hey, these parolees and you are doing quite substantive work out there. But I said, the issue of funding, then she said, I've got ND, you said NDA from her department, NC, that could support and giving funding to our parolees so that these skills that are taught inside, they can have a funding from the sector departments, because sometimes they are stigmatized that you are from a correctional facility, you remain the bandit, they call it in parliament. I'm just watching the parliamentarians, calling them names, but there is afterlife and taking care. So that aftercare program, it's quite possible with the help from the Department of Social Development and other departments that support us. We are going to take Q&A of clarity not another presentation. Engagements and everything will be done in commissions. I will take hands, I will give you numbers, and it should be based on the presentation done, if you need your presenters to respond to, but clarity seeking question. A lot of deliberations will happen at the commission level. I'll be starting from this side. If there's none, I'm passing. No afterthought, no matters arising, no nothing. Once I'm gone, I'm gone. You'll be number 1. Going, gone, closed. One hand this side. And then this side. Is there a roving mic? There's a roving mic. Now he turns the bioscope to himself. Yeah, man. You will be our number 1, number 2, and 3. Thank you. On this row. No afterthoughts, nothing. You will be number 4. Number 4, you can put your hand down. Last row. Going, gone. Only 5 hands. In a minute or 2, number 1, start. Usalungise bioscope. Don't you trust our own cameras that they will capture you? You introduce yourself and the department or the sector you are coming from. Can you fix the bioscope? Because I see he trusts his own bioscope. Can we help with the sound? Thank you. It's on now.
Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister, and fellow South Africans. Miles Budu.
Oh, you forever pump me with those messages. Yeah, you can harass people.
I apologize for that. But I think it's
Nice meeting you.
constructive harassment. Deputy Minister, thank you for the invite coming from the Minister, the Deputy Minister, and the National Commissioner. It came in as a surprise, and it was history number 2. The first history when I met the Minister in August last year. That was history, after I was released from prison in 1991. But be that as it may, there's a lot that has been said, but I would bullet point my input. Without any further ado, I want to go back on the 23rd and the 24th of July 2015, when there was a national conference held for ex-offenders, the one and only one before and up to today. And I heard the professor spoke about recommendations that were taken.
Just a second, Mr. Budu. I'm going to kill you. Continue serving tea, I'm going to kill you. And I'll be sentenced for mort. Yeah, because I've given you tea breaks, but there's people that can't respect meetings, or they love the tea more than anything. We're about to take lunch. Can we be orderly? When we're in portfolio, when we're in parliament, we don't eat. So I've given you even not 15, 20 minutes in Yana. Yeah, just respect these Q&As because we really want to hear, and our team of scribers want to capture everything. Can we do that? Thank you. You may continue.
Thanks,
I'm protecting you
Deputy.
from the plenary.
I nearly forgot what I wanted to say. But I want to also thank the Minister and the Deputy Minister and the National Commissioner for the mere fact that they organized this event here. It has saved the Department of Correctional Services hundreds, if not thousands, of taxpayers' monies. We need to go back to the recommendations that were made at the Gala Ex-Offenders Conference, 2015. There are 9 of them. I'm not going to go into details, but maybe we'll discuss it in the breakaway groups. Because if we want to deal with recidivism, we want to deal with overcrowding, we want to deal with deaths in prison, whether it is natural, unnatural deaths, escapes, and so on. Let's go back to those recommendations. There are 9 of them. They talk about victims, they talk about government involvement, community involvement, they talk even about an umbrella body for ex-offenders organized. You don't leave the Department of Correctional Services want to do their own thing. You don't leave government want to do their own thing and then talk in hindsight about what needs to be done. The recommendations was submitted to the minister. The recommendations were submitted to my contacts in Parliament, and I thought maybe it is about time that they put that on the agenda. And finally, Victims' Rights Charter. Not Victims' Rights Chapter, Victims' Rights Charter. It makes me recall the Victims' Rights Charter, Freedom Charter. The Victims' Rights Charter should have been sprinkled by now into the Constitution so that the victims of crime and criminals can show you a chapter, Bill of Rights, section, subsection, and paragraph, like we had with the offenders. Chapter 2 of the Bill of Rights, section 35, subsection 2, paragraph E, is the rights of sentenced and unsentenced prisoners. Where are the rights of the victims of crime and criminals? And it's about time, and lawmakers, researchers, and legislatures, I hope there will be a private members bill, private members legislation, where the issues of the victims of crime and criminals is constitutionalized, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. Please don't send 1 a.m. WhatsApp, man. Hey. That was on a lighter note. Yeah, he can send 3 a.m., midnight, he sends audios, he sends pictures, he sends everything. Hey, yeah, mais pudu. Where na? Number 2.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. All protocol observed. I am Emmanuel Zwelihle-Nzuza, chairperson of the board, the Parole board, working from the Ngome management area. My question relates to the Lombard and part of the presentation, but especially the Lombard aspect of it, which focused on sexual offenses. But before I go to that, I'm just hoping that methodologically, this whole approach to fixing the system of parole will use the systems approach, which will pay due regard to the interconnectedness between the entire system and specifically the key role player, which are the parole boards and the working conditions thereof. I want to check to what extent the study on sexual offenses visited the possible link, which I think is vital for a holistic and offense-specific rehabilitation between sexual offenses, especially ones that are committed by males, and underlying patriarchal, androcentric, and sexist norms and stereotypes. Because you might be fixing the symptoms of the offense and not addressing the underlying norms and behavioral patterns. And the other one which relates to that one is just about the link between sexual offenses generally and gender-based violence. And I'm thinking...
I knew you were gonna laugh. But it's key issues. All our presenters, take note of your issues because I will be coming back to you so that you can respond to the question. Okay. Number 3.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, DM. My question is to...
Identify yourself.
I am Chris Msimango. I am from LMN region, representing Wheatbank management area. Yes, ma'am. Prof. Lombard made quite a radical presentation. Minister, thank you also for taking us back to the lecture room because we are being lectured, which is quite good. I listened to Prof. But needed clarity on the issue of the provision of your specialists or your professionals. And at one stage, he indicated that some of these offenders even have money they can pay for some of those professionals that need to assist them. Now, my question, if I heard him very well, my question then becomes, if we do that, are we not going to run the risk of only assisting those who have money? They have nots, will be able to buy their time out of prison. And the poorest of the poor, and I'm not their champion, I'm the chairperson of the Parole Board. But when you have the poorest of the poor in our prisons languishing there and don't have money to pay for a psychiatrist or a psychologist or whoever, are we not going to have them stay long in prison because they cannot pay? They will not have money for that, unless maybe he would clarify exactly what he meant. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Msimango. I still remain your mayor from Emalahleni. I still govern there. Number 4.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, all the distinguished guests. Let me just throw
You
broad
identify yourself
strokes on this.
before you go straight.
I am Franz Mokisi. I'm a member of the NCCS. Number one, let me begin by saying it is encouraging that we are talking about legislative also amendments in this regard. I must say that reading the Act 111 of 1998, there are things that are as sore eye as you look into the Act itself. For an example, some of the core mandates of the departments are not defined and described in the Act. We are talking about correctional system, but the correctional system is not defined in the Act. We are talking about rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is not defined in the Act. And many other things that are not defined. And if these things are not defined, how is the department expected to deliver on its mandate with things that are not defined by the Act? So everybody will just do what they think is right for them to be able to do their job. For an example, one of the mandates of the NCCS is to advise the minister on policy, but policy is not defined in the Act. So it means the NCCS need to figure for themselves what does policy mean. We have been talking and listening to all the presentations here this morning, particularly about the risk assessment and all the tools that have been presented in enhancing the rehabilitation and the evaluation of risk. And what is the purpose of all those things? It is all boiling to one in trying to bring about an evidence-based parole system where if an offender is released on parole, then we have a reason why we release that offender on parole. But I think as we are thinking about those risk aspects of parole, we must also be equally thinking about the systemic deficiency within our department and within our parole system that contributes to an ineffective parole system. Because we can now go and get all those risk assessment protocols in place, but then those are brought again to systemic deficiencies that are there, which will again militate against those endeavors. Also, one of the things that must also not fall through the cracks is the whole parole consideration process. If we are going to improve the inputs, the outputs also need to be improved. In a sense, if the parole boards and the NCCS are going now to be presented with really proper risk evaluation, then also the quality of the parole consideration process must also be improved as well. Because if that is not done, we are going to end up just with a thick profile, but lacking the skills to read, to interpret, to evaluate, and to access those inputs that have been made into the profile report. And lastly, let me just remark on the contextualization
You
we
know
have
what
seen.
is the problem, Tate Franz?
Yes.
You are not clarity seeking. You are doing exactly what you must go and do at the commissions.
Okay.
Let me protect you from yourself. Because you are an NCCS, Angish.
Yes.
Protect, and then at the commission, talk, advise us, input there. I said clarity.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share this program so that in the next 5 minutes, we're going to be taking our lunch. Issues of question 1 by Miles Budu. He's multitasking. His communications, his participant, his others. I love your spirit, you know. If there's one thing that parole and serving your sentence works, and you remain with us for life, you don't want to divorce us, you are a true testimony. On the issues raised on the victims charter, and are there any takers for our presenters to respond on that? On issues raised by Miles Budu? Commissioner, are you okay? That conference of ex-offenders, but matters that will be taken to commission and would come, and you'll provide us with those 9 points. Nah? Talk to you because, hey, you, what's up, young? I see. So the Bill of Rights, in terms of all the issues that you've raised, I've captured that everything. But I'm happy that since 1991, you are there. You are there, you are a living testimony that some of the things can work, but it needs us to work collectively and find a way on taking care of the ex-offenders and also the victims, not forgetting the victims. Because while the others have the rights, and the others also, we must not trample on their rights. I've got judges here who sit and preside, and they will be with us in those commissions. I am taking note of your matters. I see your hand, I'm not sure why. Why Ninkomba yena? Want to respond? Yes. But you should have run and not raise a hand then. Then you've got little spokesperson and your advocacies jumping around and wanting you to respond. You should have just came.
I do apologize for not jumping up and running. I am paraplegic and paralyzed.
No, my
and constrained
apology.
to the
There were
wheelchair.
other many 5 hands for you.
Thank you so much. My name is Nura Sakhos. I'm the co-founder of South African Prevention, SOS, standing for Save Our Souls. Based on what Mr. Budu has said, I'm not going to directly respond to that, but indirectly, in a way, do that as well as make a statement based on the questions that have been formed through and brought through. First of all, yes, everything looked good on paper in 2015 when suggestions were brought about reforming our constitution and making the machine of the working systems of DCS more fluid, and it seems to not have been able to be implemented because of understaff, overcrowding. As our minister has also previously said, it's taken a while for this machine to break down is going to take a long time to build up, which I have to beg to differ that with the presentations that were presented, they are also assisted with AI, in which we think that AI would be impartial in when it comes to evaluating parolees on whether, or assessing them. That would actually be beneficial. It would take out a lot of time, eliminate errors, also corruption. I do think that these kind of implementations are important, as well as bringing in the victims, bringing in the communities, and also looking at reintegration for parolees, not just within businesses or private organizations that will accept it, but also the government institutions, as well as becoming an official member in DCS, of knowing how it works, but also to be reintegrated to a very different system altogether. We find that we have the best interest at heart for wanting parolees to be set free, thinking, is it a right or is it a privilege? I would say it is a right, but only a privilege for those who can financially facilitate it, which really, really imbalances the scales of justice. And as an organization, we are looking at the restoration of human justice, human rights, and also pinpointing and identifying exactly what it is that we can do, and also in a very quick, effective way, we can collaborate and execution to a very corrupt and imbalanced.
And the issues raised? Thank you. Can the roving mic? I'm trying two hands towards lunch. And the food is smelling nice.
Thank you, MC. Working. Hello?
Yeah, you are audible.
Thank you, MC. Okay, with regards to
Just a little
the
bit.
post-conviction sex offender testing, it's quite a lot of criteria goes into it for anyone to be eligible for that. And that I'm going to leave to Department of Correctional Services and the Justice Department to decide. What we do find in real life, in reality, is that some sex offenders, especially pedophiles, the parent or the family members are reluctant to report it in fear of a person going to jail.
Sure.
Because who's going to feed the family? Who's going to support the family? So in cases like that, it's going to have to depend on the authorities to decide who is going to be eligible or not. Now, I think, thank goodness I'm not a pedophile or a sex offender, but in the case of that, I would rather find the money to pay for the therapy and for paying for whatever is attached to that, than to sit in jail and not get any therapy in the correctional institution and not get any treatment in response. So, I'm going to repeat, if you have to find the means, if you have to find it, and I'm going to look at situations, especially like a Oscar situation where the uncle is providing it, somewhere out there, someone will say, all right, give the man a second chance. And I believe in second chances, and I believe that there are some people that can be rehabilitated, and there are others that will definitely not fit the program.
No,
Any
thank
other
you very
questions?
much. I think you've dealt with question 2 and question 3 simultaneously, because the others were dealing with sex offenders and those things of GPVF and their relations and interconnectedness. Also, you dealt with the money being paid towards the services that you did, but also you are sharpening contradictions. Minister and NC who can access their funding while they are incarcerated. Those are the things that we must take to the commission and deal with them, because there's limitations of how much money they can access, and so that we don't give free for all, but Let's take it back there, the contradictions. I hope members of the parole board, you'll also continue that matter at that level. Are we good? Thank you very much.
Thank you,
And then the other one, it's on legislative amendments that was raised by Baba Franz, but and some of the issues that are not clearly defined. My portfolio chairperson, did you hear that? Some of the things that legislators have made the laws, but some are not clearly defined. But there are many processes. We must not forget that there is an review on the criminal justice system holistically, because we have picked up that there are issues that are not really been defined well, or how we work from the SAPs as they arrest to NPA, and taking the matters to say, do we have a prima facie evidence, taking them and presenting before the court, whether that evidence is evidence that has weight, somebody can be prosecuted, and then the court of law then will hand over the sanction, and somebody it's sent to correctional services. So that chain of the criminal justice, it is key. That is why that reviewal also, other than the parole system, it's key for all of us, because it's inclusive of everything from where we start until at the end, until you are outside. I think those are the matters that we must make sure that we navigate as we move with both, because both are really under-reviewed. And I think as members who serve within our cluster, you know these processes. Because sometimes we criticize the judges, sometimes we criticize the NPA and the police and the long investigation and until somebody has applied for bail, bail is granted, it's out there, and it says, has raped so many times and so forth. So I'm just raising that as an example to say this chain for us, it's key. Can we take it to commission? Is it possible? Thank you very much, NCCS member. Now we've dealt with all our questions. Now we are coming to our attention. Minister, is there anything, or you'll see us tomorrow on the issues raised? You are okay? Minister, Social Development, you are okay? DM Muhai, you are okay? My chairperson of portfolio, you are okay? Thank you very much. And then we're coming with the announcement of the food. Item Ifau. President Ifau, Haile, Union. I must indicate that all our food has been prepared in-house. As Lalila, we save costs as correctional services. It's prepared by our staff in-house. No private caterer has been appointed. From breakfast to lunch, everything is Department of Correctional Services. Even the veggies and everything that we have eaten, we only source the protein. So we're really cost effective in terms of managing our finances. So as we go and take lunch, our program was saying by 1:30 we should be here. Can I maintain 1:30 so that we can move? There are 4 serving points. Those that were there at the dining hall, there was a portfolio committee and the other members were on there's 2 serving points. They will go back there. The minister will take the other ministers and the judges to the ministers be served. But all of us, the food is the same. There are other 2 serving points in here at plenary. Let us try and make use of the time effectively. Once you are done eating, there's no harm in going out there and supporting our stalls. We've got a speed point, we take cash, so that that money is plowed back to SSSF, so that we sustain and skilling and buying material. As we move to lunch, let us try and be there for 1:30. Our team of officials that have cooked for us, let's make sure that our serving point are ready now. Can we allow the minister and the other ministers, DMs, the judges, and our portfolio committee to make their way towards their area of having lunch, and then we'll also do that. 1:30, let us be back, and I will not be here. My co-program director, Professor Tobane, will be taking over from me. Thank you very much. Hopefully I have not Anginikhubanga, everybody is still fine. I have not touched any corners. May God bless you as you go and eat. And that food is blessed. Thank you very much.